right, we're going to get started. If you all please, because we're going to now switch into a panel discussion. For those of you who are kind of sitting here on the side here, it would be great if you guys could move in more towards the center. Just adjust a little bit because again, we're going to have more of an open discussion here. And our panelists are going to be sitting. Yeah. If you don't mind moving.
So it's 1, 2.
Other way.
So it's in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm standing here anyway. I don't think you're sitting there. This is it. That's for later.
Okay, again, it would be great if you can move towards the center. Because it will be easier to have the discussion this way. Okay, so we are now going to have our panel session here. And this is Commercialization Curious, How to Get Started, Early Pathways panel. And I welcome my guests here today to speak on their efforts in this area. And so this panel is really, again, for the early stage faculty, the inventor, or those who may not even understand the invention process, but even some of you who are more experienced. Again, you may gain some additional insight into some of the processes, the obstacles, and how to overcome some of those obstacles and strategies and best practices. All right, so our panelists are, so we have Tatiana Litvin-Bekniak. She's Associate Vice President, Innovation Ventures, Rutgers University, where she oversees the activities of technology transfer and the new ventures groups, focused on management of the intellectual property assets of the university in all areas. Dr. Litvin-Bekniak has nearly 20 years of experience in IP management, over 10 years overseeing patenting, licensing related activities at Rutgers and other institutions. She was Senior Licensing Associate at the Office of Technology Transfer and Business Development at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. She holds a PhD in pharmacology from the Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences, an undergraduate degree in biochemistry and molecular biology from Clark University. Our second panelist is Christina Pelican, and she's the Assistant Director of Innovation and lead instructor for the National Science Foundation, I-Corps Northeast Hub at Princeton University. She's also co-founder and CEO of startup Thinkovitz and nationally certified NSF I-Corps instructor. Previously, Ms. Pelican served as the first director of commercialization for the University of Delaware, Horn Entrepreneurship Center. She served as the first executive manager of the New York City I-Corps node, among other positions. She's held many positions, clinical business administrator, study monitor at a clinical research organization. She holds a BS in biology and animal science from the University of Georgia and master's in business and science with a concentration in biotechnology and genomics from Rutgers. And then our other panelist, Mike Wiley. He is the vice president of the New Jersey Health Foundation and its affiliate Foundation Venture Capital Group. Prior to this, Mr. Wiley's experience included business development and venture financing, program product development, commercial contracting, IP, technology licensing, at such organizations as New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Rutgers University. Mr. Wiley has earned BA, MBA, and JD degrees from West Virginia University. So I welcome these panelists today. And so if we can have then each of them speak about your respective institutions, your roles at these respective institutions, and how your work with faculty on the commercialization of their technology, how you are involved in those activities. So I'm going to first start with Tatiana, and you need to come up here.
already had interesting conversations with several of you. Looking forward to the rest of the day and the conversations. So I am with Rutgers University. I am one of the members of Mike's Rights team. And I oversee a team called Innovation Ventures, which is focused on commercializing intellectual property in the various forms that exist out of the research laboratories at Rutgers University. So the mission of the team is to partner with the community, Rutgers community, beyond Rutgers community, as you've heard, to encourage deliberate innovation. So we're big in the concept of deliberate innovation. Protect and leverage Rutgers intellectual property, foster collaboration with industry, and enable entrepreneurship. So the team is made up of 4 distinct sub-teams that work very closely together. We have the IP team that manages everything related to the steps required for protection of intellectual property. We have the licensing team that's made up of 9 or 10 professionals with various technical backgrounds that manage the evaluation and protection of the different types of intellectual property. And we have intellectual property in the life sciences space, in the physical sciences space, in the agriculture space, and we also commercialize a lot of non-patented intellectual property such as software and copyrighted works. We have the new ventures team that specifically focuses on startup-related services, and they really work with researchers on many steps along the path to creating a startup company if that's the best way to commercialize an innovation, and beyond. So there's obviously a lot of work that's required to stand up a company and to support it really along the way, hopefully to success, ultimately to success. And that includes providing access and warm introductions to investor network, assistance with business plans, and access to SBIR, STTR, and other funding. We've heard that we have at Rutgers commercialization funding called Tech Advance and Health Advance, which we're really excited to have and manage and provide access to our researchers. It's been really instrumental in helping us move our innovations forward. And we have the finance and compliance team who does exactly that, sort of manages the finances related to all of that and really all the compliance activities related to that, which is a lot. So offices like ours exist, actually just a brief history, as a result of the Bayh-Dole Act. So all of the institutions and nonprofit organizations that receive federal funding are under an obligation to advance the fruit of that research for the public good. So that's what we do. That's one of our sort of important responsibilities, and a lot of activities that we do are related to that notion. So our process begins with the idea coming out of the research or scholarly activities of our researchers and staff. They disclose the invention to us, and then we go through the steps of the evaluation, figuring out what the best step for it is, what's the best step for protection, what's the best step for commercialization, filing a patent application, doing marketing, looking for partners to move it towards the next step. Hopefully a license or a startup creation, and then ongoing alliance management for really the lifetime of the technology. Just to share with you some of the numbers for the fiscal year 22 at Rutgers, we manage a really large portfolio. We have about 12 to 1,300 technologies under our management. 43% of those technologies are partnered, so we sign a lot of new license and option agreements on an annual basis. Last year we signed 81 licenses and options, and we manage over 800 active licenses. We started 8 new companies last year, and we have a total anywhere between 94 and 95, sometimes companies go under. We terminate them, but on average, it's close to 100 companies that we manage, or we help manage it and we support. We receive about 200 or a little under 200 new invention disclosures per year. That number is a bit on the low side for us, so we're always looking to get in front of people, get in front of innovators, researchers, entrepreneurs, to tell them about the resources that we have and to get them involved with our office. Just wanted to share with you some of the technologies that have been invented at Rutgers. Brineura was developed by Rutgers professors Peter Lobel and David Sleet, and it's a life-changing enzyme replacement therapy for a devastating pediatric disease. We have a lot of innovations in the ag space. We have cranberries, we have dogwood trees, we have peach trees, and we have a lot of innovations in the physical sciences space. Solidia, for example, is a startup company based on the work done by Rick Ryman from the School of Engineering, and it's a cement and concrete technology company. It was very hard, by the way, narrowing down the examples that I was going to share to just 3. I started with about 20, but that's it. Thank you.
Everyone, so thanks again, Katrina, for having us. As introduced, I'm Christina Pelican. I'm Assistant Director of Innovation in the Dean for Research's office. So we kind of support all of the research across campus at Princeton. What's this touching? So our mission in Princeton Innovation is to encourage, facilitate, and promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and partnerships. And we really are focused on the service to humanity and supporting the innovation ecosystem. So we do that through our process here, all the way from research through startup. We have a number of support offerings that, and I will defer to my colleagues in the Office of Tech Licensing, which is also within the Dean for Research's office, if you have any specific questions about the programs that they offer. So at the early stage, we have a program or partnership with IntelliSpark to help our faculty write SBIR, STTR grants. We have education and training programs in partnership with Wharton and with VentureWell for faculty and grad students respectively. These are really short co-curricular programs to kind of introduce the idea of entrepreneurship to faculty and grad students. And then we have the customer discovery side of it. So we are leading the new Northeast I-Core Hub in partnership with Rutgers and NJECC and a number of other schools, Rowan, and many more. And then we have the Princeton Innovation Center Biolabs. If you want to move out of the university and into facilities, that's nearby campus as well. And my colleagues in the Princeton Entrepreneurship Council run the office hour programs, which provides access to mentors for free on their online portal. Super convenient to get some high quality mentorship, and there's obviously funding, at the later end. So firms like Nassau Street Ventures, Fitsgate, Princeton Alumni Angels are all very, not solely focused on Princeton entrepreneurs, but certainly interested in supporting them. So this is kind of the spectrum of the offerings, some of the offerings, not all, that we offer at Princeton across our different organizations. I've pulled together the Princeton INE kind of catalog of offerings recently, and it's about 56 across the campus. So this is just a high level, the ones that we kind of have the most, see the most people in. So a little bit of focus on the I-Core program, because that's often what I get asked the most about with my background. So I-Core is a training program started by the National Science Foundation. It's now offered by 8 other federal agencies. And as I mentioned, we're part of this I-Core hub that provides regional and national training to researchers, so scientists, engineers, et cetera, across the Northeast. Those 8 schools that are part of our hub, but everyone else in the Northeast as well can participate in the training program. The objectives are here: training an entrepreneurial workforce, translating technologies, enabling economic impact, nurturing an innovation ecosystem. So these are from the congressional report that NSF puts out every other year. So we have run 5 cohorts this year. It's our first year. We're about to run our 6th. It's just a lot of activity this year. And so pulling the numbers from all 6, we've trained 94 teams, about 300 individuals across 18 universities in 7, probably more than that, 7 states. They've definitely raised more than $500K in follow-on funding, but just the regional teams that have gone on to the national I-Core program, that's this number. And I know there are a couple of teams that have already won SBIR grants. So more than 500K for sure. And then each cohort we run is a train the trainer. So if any of you are interested in either observing or potentially teaching or mentoring in our program, let me know. We can definitely involve you in the I-Core program. So we've trained 60 instructors and mentors this year. So that's what we've been up to this past year under the I-Core umbrella. In particular, there's lots of activity, new avenues being created. At Princeton, we were not involved in I-Core before, in particular, and we've had about 20 teams go through the regional program already. So it's been really an exciting year for us. Mark Guzman, my colleague at Rutgers, runs the Innovating Together program. He's our our I-Core coordinator, and much more than that. And this is an offering that we provide to our I-Core alum, yes, but it, is kind of designed for them as a next step opportunity, or to make them aware of other opportunities that are out there. But we actually bring together a lot more than just the I-Core alum in these Innovating Together talks. They're about an hour long. We do a little I-Core commercial in the beginning, and then we usually have a team that has been through I-Core and through this partner program to kind of talk a little bit about their experience going through both. And then the folks who are running the other program, like HACS or Dark Digital Sciences Studio, they also talk about their program and maybe teach a little bit about what they do there. So that's our Innovating Together series. And then the last thing I want to plug is NJECC is our annual entrepreneurship and innovation conference that is for all academics across the country. And that is next week, so please come. It's all online, really packed agenda, some really great speakers. We have about 60 speakers from some of these institutions, Techstars, Harvard Business School, Village Capital, some really great speakers I'm excited about. So that's it, that's all I have, and I guess if you want to scan that, that's how you connect with me in LinkedIn, email, etc. I don't think you have slides, right? Do you want this one?
Good morning. I'm Mike White. I'm the Vice President from the New Jersey Health Foundation and Foundation Venture Capital Group. I actually do have slides that are going to summarize these comments, so I can provide them after the event if it's going to be helpful, but I want to get to the panel discussion, so I'll just give you a brief introduction on our organization. So through our affiliate or sister organizations, Foundation for Health Advancement, New Jersey Health Foundation, and Foundation Venture Capital Group, our main mission is to improve health here in New Jersey and around the world. And as we look at improving health, that definition of health is broadly defined for us. So we use paradigms like healthy planet, healthy community, and healthy people to evaluate opportunities that we're going to invest in or fund. A unique aspect of our programming and our organization is we focus on a select group of affiliate partner institutions here in New Jersey. So many of them are here today, a lot of the major research universities. So that includes NJIT, Princeton, Rutgers, Rowan University, Stevens Institute of Technology on the university side, and then the Kessler Foundation, Cooper University Medical Center, and Hackensack Meridian Hospital on the clinical side. Under the various affiliate partners that we have, we provide both basic research funding. That's an annual grant program, $35,000 per project, about $2 million per year. That's actually active right now. We have an innovation grant program. This is for basic proof of concept. We typically do around $50,000 per project. That is open. It starts with a conversation with someone like me or my colleague Scott Alpazar, who's here. And it's focused on prototyping, acquiring some additional data, whatever that next milestone of development that you may need to move the project forward. And then the last piece, through Foundation Venture Capital Group, which is our seed fund, will invest typically up to $500,000 into a startup company to help further commercialize that research. That's a high level, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on the panel right afterwards.
Okay, great. Thank you for all of the information about what you do at your respective institutions and how you can work with faculty. So I'll start with some questions, and then we'll open it up to the attendees here if you have some questions. But so again, as a faculty member, so I routinely hear from my colleagues that they are too busy to start this process, right, of commercialization, patenting, and even considering going down this pathway. And so, because we have to work towards tenure and promotion, so do you have, any recommendations or strategies for faculty who are, maybe a little apprehensive or maybe curious, but any recommendations on how to balance the busy life of being a faculty member and going through that process, and then also considering this?
Would you like me to take that? So I always encourage faculty to reach out to our team. We're here to support you through the entire process, including, if needed, filling out the invention disclosure form. So we have an online disclosure form through the Innovator portal at Rutgers. It's innovatorportal.rutgers.edu. It's a pretty straightforward form. We allow attachments, so if there's a scientific article or a draft of an article that you are planning to submit, you can just submit that. We do need some sort of a brief description of an idea, and then we're going to do a lot of the work. I'm not going to say that it's not going to require time and effort from you, especially if we go through the USPTO process of obtaining a patent. There's a lot of communication back and forth, but the team is there to support you. We have patent attorneys that help with you, and ultimately, I think the important thing to think about is the impact that these steps can have on the community and on the public and on the health of the people. And without taking those steps, it's going to be hard to achieve that impact. So I think step one is getting familiar with the resources that are available. I think you're going to be really excited about the community of people that you meet along the way, and it's going to get easier along the process. So we have people that have gone through this process multiple times, and reading and understanding office actions becomes easier. Once you know who the licensing manager within the team, it becomes easy to text them. I have a lot of people texting me on a regular basis, and I don't mind. I welcome that. So we're here to help you. Lean heavy on the technology commercialization team and other resources that you will need along the way, because that's exactly what we're here for, and we're going to make it as easy as possible. And we also always welcome feedback. If we can do certain things to make the journey easier, we're here to do that.
Just quickly add that just focusing on the ICOR side, each ICOR team has 3 members: the entrepreneurial lead, the technical lead, and an industry mentor. And the entrepreneurial lead is really the leader of the ICOR team. And that is more often than not the grad student or postdoc. The faculty member is the technical lead, and so they're there to support and provide the technical expertise if needed to the entrepreneurial lead. But the entrepreneurial lead is the one that often becomes the CEO of the startup. And in the startup that I'm at, Lignolix, everyone says Lignolix, so it makes me chuckle now, but it's lignin plus phenolics, Lignolix. So that is started by a faculty member at University of Delaware, and that team went through ICOR, and when they did, or rather afterwards, the professor, he's still working at University of Delaware. He's the scientific advisor and the CSO of the company, and the 2 grad students are CEO and CTO. So that's kind of a very typical setup that we see. We don't really want faculty leaving at least their full-time effort as researchers. They're doing great research. That's what their career path was. They're passionate about it. They're doing great work there. So we try to let them have a natural route to just be the scientific, not just, but to be the scientific advisor rather than the CEO of the startup.
Yeah, I think Dr. Zwick had some comments around Rutgers policy to, incentivize or align some of this activity with, their promotion, which is, I think, a fantastic step forward, just to align those. And then in terms of the effort, I think Tanya touched on it. I mean, this is really important work, and you can't kind of stroll to the goal, so you do have to lean into it. But there are a tremendous amount of resources at all of these institutions to help you, navigate that process. And then on our side, a term we like to use is operational capital. And we also like to say in our innovation grant program, and when we're funding companies, we meet them where they're at. So this may be the very beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. You may be a basic research scientist and you've never done anything on the industrial side. That's okay, that's where you're starting from. And then we have other folks who are serial entrepreneurs, and then we meet them where they're at and try to add value, add resources to make that journey as easy as possible. And then I think the models that Christina and I think Tanya also touched on it, with just leveraging other resources, that is, colleagues, students, we prototypically see, the faculty member maybe leading on some of the technology, but then bringing in graduate students to go out with the technology. And the faculty member may be on the scientific advisory board, may have a more formalized role, but it's not the primary role. there's other team members that can take some of that load off of their shoulders. And then we have a startup here at NJIT, Ocular Motor Technologies. That's the way that came out of the university. Also, Nemogen is another one that we have at Rutgers. Similarly, we're adding talent to the team as it progresses the technology forward. But I would just encourage people to at least learn about the opportunity. We need your technology, your science to move forward to impact these problems that we're struggling with. So at least chat with Tanya or her colleagues at the other universities to figure out what resources are there to support you.
I just have one quick comment to sort of bring it, maybe full circle, maybe half circle, but there are different ways to commercialize. There are different innovations. In some instances, a startup is the best way to go. In some instances, it's the licensing to existing company. So in the instance of the startup company, obviously it's a heavier lift. In the instance of a licensing to an existing company, it's a little bit easier. Also, there are so many different types of intellectual property that we have technologies or innovations that are curriculum, for example, that might be useful to somebody else at another institution or an organization, and we help commercialize that as well. So we welcome working with a number of researchers and innovators and scholars along the way to commercialize in various ways.
Great, thank you. So can you provide advice on how faculty can start building relationships and connections with business partners, entrepreneurs, investors, really those that are involved more again in this process? As researchers, faculty researchers, we've got a great collaborations. We know how to write those NSF and NIH grants. But go on the other side in the business area, how do we start to build those types of those connections and that network?
I think attending conferences like this is an excellent first step, and then I guess keep going from here. Maybe you meet one connection, follow up on that connection, go to the next meeting, sign up on LinkedIn, look at all sorts of different events. I know that NIH and NSF and lots of other scientific organizations hold a lot of really interesting events. So just step outside, just a little bit of the outside the comfort zone, and then follow up and follow through on some of the connections that you make there. And I think all of these steps will not only provide education and access to these new opportunities in terms of investors or founders, for example, for a startup, but they're also going to inform your research that you do and inform further funding opportunities. So it's not just for the purpose of commercialization and innovation, but I think it's also really important and helpful for the direction that your research may take and other funding opportunities.
I think just briefly on the IPOR front, we, as Katrina knows well, we ask teams to create their hypotheses around who they think their customer might be, what the value of the technology might be to those individuals, how might they make revenue from that value, et cetera. But those are all assumptions and guesses until they actually go and talk to the customers and understand, whether or not that's validated or invalidated. And so through the IPOR process, faculty and grad students create their own connections. It helps to inform whether or not there is a market for IP licensing or a startup. And then really interestingly, and for me it's pretty exciting to see a lot of our grad students, those entrepreneurial leads, they end up getting multiple job offers through the process of customer discovery. So if they decide not to go on to the startup, start a startup themselves, a lot of them go on to industry in pretty great positions right out of college. So some of them are making more than me that I taught years ago, and I'm like, great, good for you. This is fantastic. And one young woman at University of Delaware, she got hired by a company in Texas, and then they paid for her to go through to get her MBA. So she's doing amazing, and that's just one example. But it's really exciting to see those connections lead to career development or understanding of the market for IP, et cetera. So we encourage them to go to conferences, do that work, the legwork themselves, come back to us with. We can help them, as far as mentorship.
Yeah, I would encourage you to get out and talk to as many people as possible. Make sure you chat with your tech transfer office. Make sure you don't give any confidential information away. but you have to have a means of non-confidential communication to engage prospective partners. I would, definitely plug iCore. I think it provides a nice structure for you to reach out, kind of lean in outside your comfort zone, as Tanya had mentioned. And I think on the scientific side, make sure you do push yourself beyond, say, the scientists at J&J or Colgate, and try to make a connection on the business side as well. At least in my experience, to get a deal done with these kinds of institutions, you gotta satisfy multiple stakeholders. So getting that feedback early is really important. Going to these conferences, I just got back from the MedTech conference in Boston, is a great way to engage them. They're gonna be interested in your research and your science, so there'll be plenty of people that will respond. And I would do it well before you would actually need whatever it is you're trying to get from them. And so Scott and one of our portfolio companies was on a call last night with a VC. We're not even raising capital right now. So we're actually, we call it the soft pitch. We get to them when we're not needy, build a relationship, and keep investing in that, so the time when we need that capital, we're going to already have that established relationship. It goes much easier that way. So that would be my suggestions.
Okay, and I think, so Tatiana, you touched on this a little bit, I guess. So how can faculty determine if they should become entrepreneurs, create that startup themselves, be a co-founder, or when to license technology? Any advice on how to gauge that?
We're actually holding a symposium at Rutgers boot camp where we provide education on these topics to our faculty and students, etc. And if anybody in this community is interested, please let me know. We'll extend the invitation happily. So it's very much a case by case. I think we have to be mindful of a couple of things. Number one, always keeping in mind the technology itself, at least from a university perspective. What will be the best thing for the technology to sort of hit the ground running? Would it be an existing company with a lot of resources and infrastructure? But on the flip side, will the company dedicate the time and effort that's required to move that technology forward? Or is it going to be maybe second, third, fourth best thing for them to move forward? If something is a platform technology and requires a lot of further development before it can be applied to a variety of different applications or fields of use, then perhaps spinning out a company and sort of supporting it in that nascent stage and phase for a little while longer before building out maybe a business development or a licensing strategy is the best thing. So we really look at a number of factors, and one of the important factors is the researcher themselves. Are they interested in investing the time that it will take for them to invest? Are they interested in having an active role, whether it's scientific or some sort of a leadership role in the company? Where is their career and stage of their career at the university? Do they want to dedicate more time on the university side, or step out just a little bit, maybe even take a sabbatical? So we look at all of those factors very, very carefully, and we are very sensitive to the needs and the interests of the researcher themselves. However, having said that, I think over time, and I'm sure others would agree with that, larger companies are becoming more risk averse, so they're more interested in taking on a technology that's been de-risked and developed further, rather than taking an early stage technology. So I think that at Rutgers, about half of our exclusive licenses go to startup companies. So we're seeing that concept of spinning out a startup to do initial, further development, more attractive way to move a technology forward out of a university.
Actually, the same stat at Princeton right now too. About 50% of our licensing deals go to Princeton spin-outs. I don't really have anything else to add, because I was just going to point out it's as much of a business decision as it is a personal one, and a lot of our teams just don't want to, they're not as passionate as they thought they might have been to spend 5-10 years building a startup, and that's okay. So move on and use that knowledge to get better research grants. Do better with the research you're doing.
I just want to do a quick plug before Mike takes over, and maybe Mike will comment on that as well. But at Rutgers specifically, we're really looking for more individuals to partner with us that would be interested in helping us start a company, so that it doesn't have to be the researcher out of the lab or leaving the lab or dedicating more time than they might wish to the startup company. And so I think Mike had that on his slides when he was doing the keynote. We're looking in identifying people, postdocs, MBA students, entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs that would be interested in working with universities, all the different universities, I'm sure, in New Jersey that are interested in getting companies off the ground.
I'm going to take a little bit of different spin, not just between licensing and startups, but really, are you going to commercialize this? And I think one of the filters you want to look at is this a nice to have or a must have is kind of the threshold. So is this a real pain point that you're trying to solve, or just one more little, we say therapeutic versus a vitamin? And because it is going to be hard work, so you want to convince yourself that, no, this is a meaningful problem and I have a meaningful solution to that problem. So that can help you kind of carry through when you're going to hit some of the challenges. And then I would agree with Tanya and Christine in terms of what we see. Unfortunately, a lot of the large players in the marketplace are kind of move upstream or more risk averse. And so you need to make more progress in advancing or maturing the technology before they're willing to engage and acquire that or license it. And so that's why we focus on a lot of our funding. We get involved on the research grant side, all the way in the basic research grant side. And from a mission perspective, we're trying to improve health. And we say, this is great, we love investing at this early stage, but if we can't help translate it out to society, are we meeting our mission and our goals? And so that's part of the reason we build out the programs that we have, is we want to have resources that can support this journey of the entrepreneur, the technology, so that it can get out and support society. So that's why we're bullish on the startup side and why we're funding startups.
Okay, so we'll open it up to the audience here for questions, and to make sure we give enough time. If you have questions for the panel.
Over there? Right over there? Oh, I can find the extra. Right there. Right there.
Thank you. That was a wonderful panel. Maybe a little controversial of a question for what you were pointing out, but universities, public, private universities, were chartered by the state of New Jersey to be a benefit to society. So when you are considering IP that has been published by your faculty, do you only consider return on investment, or do you also look at benefits to society? If there's potentially some IP that would benefit, let's say in the health industry, people in the city of Newark in impoverished situations or third world country situations of technology that helps with, it's not going to make a tremendous amount of profit, or maybe non-profit, or maybe negative profit. Is that factored in, or is that something that is not at all considered currently?
Absolutely factored in, very much so. I mean, Fred, who's sitting right next to you, can tell you about all sorts of malaria research and tuberculosis research that goes on. And in many instances, when significant investment by a pharma company is required, for example, they will want to have exclusivity. How we can influence the benefit to the public, especially in developing countries, is through some specific licensing terms. For example, we frequently have a different licensing, a financial term structure for developing countries, where we take a significantly smaller royalty percentage in the developing countries' markets, provided, and we ask that the company also takes that into consideration. So there's usually a two-way understanding of how that will be commercialized in areas where that's needed. For example, during COVID, there were very different financial terms for technologies that were relevant to the pandemic and technologies that were helping with either diagnostics or some therapeutics, and multiple universities, in fact, signed on to that. You know, the notion of, for example, putting innovation into the public, just sort of out there, open access, is a challenging one that I think most people do consider. But again, when there's significant investment that's required by a particular company, they expect exclusivity, otherwise they're not going to invest, and then you're not going to see the benefit that you're seeking. So it's a delicate balance, but we have certainly in our license agreements terms that are built into that.
I'd like to add to Tatiana's, because I do handle the TB and the malaria, and I have an alternate perspective on this as well, having spent much of my career in industry before coming to Rutgers, and knowing what it takes to commercialize, especially in areas where you're serving underdeveloped countries with malaria or with TB. There's got to be some incentive. Oftentimes, some of the Rutgers people have put their technology in the public domain, so anybody can develop it or make it available. What I'm hearing back, though, from the Medicines for Malaria for the TB Alliance is even they now want patent protection on the things they develop, because they want to be able to, in areas of the world where they can get a higher price, they want to get a higher price. And that would lead us into a whole other discussion over pharmaceutical pricing and whatnot, which is not what we're talking about here. But the issue that you bring up is a good one, and I think out of my 40 some odd years experience, I think Rutgers does a very, very good balance, especially in the infectious disease area, of how they manage this public interest versus the private interest, because without incentive for private industry to make money, there's probably not going to be development. Anyway, I hope that helps.
Questions? Anyone else have? Good.
Thank you. So can you each of you talk to inclusion and innovation? There's a lot of talk about what we want to do on campuses around commercializing technology, but not as much talk about how we will bring more people into that process from our faculty and staff and students.
Sure, I can start. So the first is, as Jeff well knows, our leadership team is one of the most diverse in the I-Core Hub network, which I think exemplifies our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then all the way down through kind of how we teach, who we recruit, especially for instructors and mentors. I don't know if you caught it on the slide of the 60, actually I think it's 61 instructors and mentors that we've had, 57% have been women and 34% have been underrepresented minorities, and there were some overlap there as well. So we have a really great partnership with GEM, which is a fellowship program that supports underrepresented individuals to get advanced degrees, PhDs, and master's degrees in STEM fields. So those alumni and those fellows are going through our program as instructors and mentors, and also as team members. We need to do better. I just was having a call with the GEM Innovation Fellows, the people who are running that program, earlier this week, and it's something that we want to be more and more intentional about. So we're talking about running a joint program together specifically just for GEM Fellows, maybe in early 2023. Mark, I got to talk to you about this. We want to make more intentional collaborations and partnerships with the people that are already on campus that are supporting underrepresented and women-focused researchers. So, advanced programs, NSB, GEM, et cetera. We're, working with all of them, and I think, as always, we can always do better, right? And especially on our team side, we're trying to increase the number of underrepresented individuals on our teams, and Rutgers runs a diversity fellowship program as well that helps to support bringing additional underrepresented team members as entrepreneurial leads to our existing teams. But yeah, so lots of intentional collaborations across campus, but there's so much more I can talk about, but I'll stop. I'm very passionate about this subject.
I think this is obviously a really important area to have conversations in and about. And I think we're somewhat early in the process. I think the conversations have been excellent. I think they're intense. I think there are many of them. But I think we need to understand that it's going to take a little bit of time to move the needle in the direction, but we have to be intentional about how we move the needle. And speaking of data, Mike talked about data and how we're overwhelmed with data and how we need to get better in understanding the data that we have, but we also need to collect, in some instances, better data and be more intentional about what we collect. So this space begins with collecting data on, for example, our innovators and who we interact with. But it's also a sensitive topic, to collect data in this space. So we're just, as an institution, we're trying to understand how should we go about that? What type of data to collect? How do we engage with our HR, for example, university-wide HR, in terms of how we leverage the data that they may have, but in a way that's appropriate and is transparent and clear and supports the ultimate mission here. We also have to be more thoughtful about our outreach, in-reach programs and ways that we communicate. So I can just say that, from my personal standpoint, I try to get, with every person that I meet, I try to get into the, why and how and what are the problems, and really learn from all of that so that we can have meaningful solutions for a great variety of people in terms of why they engage, why they don't engage, why they're, maybe they're too busy, maybe they have issues with childcare, maybe they have, a spouse who is not as supportive as, we were just talking about this. It requires a village to do all of this, just the same way that it requires a village to raise a child. So I think it's a challenging space, but one that we all, each of us, men, women, color, just everyone required to step into and lean into and help all of us find solutions for the space to make it more inclusive and more accessible for a wider group of people.
I think I would echo Tanya's comments in terms of kind of collaborating around, getting at this from a broader perspective. And this is not exclusive. We have done undergraduate student-based projects, but most of our opportunities are coming from PhD level, graduate level, either students or faculty. And when we have looked at the data in that regard, there's a concept of leakage in terms of the underrepresented making it all the way through that process and having senior tenure faculty positions. And so I think that's where we would want to look to maybe collaborating with our academic partners to identify where we could be helpful in attracting those type of underrepresented founders. We have supported some in the past, but I think we can all do a better job in that regard. And I think, as the secretary mentioned in his comments, that's really an advantage we have here in New Jersey is we have a diverse population, so we need to tap into that because while one, we want to get at the problem, number two, these communities maybe have particular problems and solutions to those problems that are great opportunities. So let's bring those forward and try to support those folks. So I would say, especially Jeff, if you have ideas on how we can engage with Rutgers and the other institutions around programs that are already kind of up and running here, we put some wind in the sails, that would be something that we'd be interested in.
I think speaking of partnerships, the one thing I'll point out that I don't run, but I think we should highlight is the PACRI program, and I don't ask me what it stands for. Do you know, Tony? It's something about research collaborations. It's PACRI if you want to look it up. This is so Princeton, under the leadership of our previous Vice Dean for Innovation, Rod Priestley, who's also the co-director of our hub, we committed a lot of money to facilitate research partnerships between Princeton researchers and researchers at HBCUs. So in this first year, we have funded 5, I've heard 5 or 10? 6, okay, thanks Denny. So my colleagues run this, but, and so we've funded 6 different, research collaborations and HBCUs to support that. So it's been really exciting and Chad Womack spoke at NJECC last week, executive director, I think, of UNCF, about how exciting that is and how much potential is going to come from that. So it's just the beginning, but I think it's a really exciting opportunity that now I was calling it peer shamed. All of the other IB plus schools were kind of talking about how they can do something similar. So hopefully there'll be a movement to facilitate, put some money where our mouths are, right? Supporting intentional research collaborations between really great researchers, both at IB plus schools and HBCUs. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
So I wanted to add to this conversation because I think Jeff's question is exactly right at the center of what we're discussing today and how we have to think about promoting partnerships. I think we don't do a good job at engaging brand new faculty to our institutions and explaining what technology transfer is. I think we need to do a much better job onboarding and welcoming them to our institutions and explaining this. We have to do this with new deans, new chairs. I personally think as senior research leader, my job is to get out there and tell the story of innovation ventures and be actively engaged across, and you have to tell it again and again in a simple way and really communicate. Because I think there's a lot of faculty who don't even imagine that what they do in the digital humanities might be something that could be trademarked and could lead to a licensing opportunity. And so I think I think we really have to tell our story much more effectively. And that's something that and Tanya and I, with the new patent policy at Rutgers, are really saying we're going to use that patent policy as a tool to engage and convene with many larger groups, because this is a new patent policy. This is a great step forward for Rutgers. We can now use that to both educate about the policy, but then tell the story more broadly than I think has been done in the past. So I think that's one key thing. The other observation I'll make is that we tend to think of faculty and students as being similar with respect to the technology transfer space. And I think it's important that we recognize that faculty interests and student interests are actually different. And the financial models for supporting faculty innovations are much clearer and much better understood. I think the financial models for how a team like Tanya's team interacts with student inventors is actually much less well developed, and is actually, there's not really a good financial model right now underlying that. And I think this is an area that, while we're quite clear that Tanya's team has skills and expertise that can apply to student innovations, we need clarity about the underlying business model of how this is going to work. The crux being that if I'm a faculty member and I discover something at Rutgers, Rutgers owns that IP and licenses it on my behalf or gives it back to me. If I'm a student at Rutgers and I create something new, Rutgers does not own that IP. And so I think that different business model has to be grappled with in a very deliberate fashion. And we've been discussing it. I'm not sure we have a solution, but I think this is something that is worth considering.
Just to add quickly, for now, to the extent that somebody wants access to us and wants to chat with us informally, we make ourselves available. So just to follow up with somebody who was from St. Peter's, I think, asking, we want to make ourselves available and collaborate with other institutions, the concept of democratizing access and really supporting the inclusive innovation for everyone. In terms of responsibility and financial model, obviously for us, the student piece is a little bit more challenging, but we're here.
I have one other, I know I said I could talk forever about DEI, but there's one last plug for Engage, where we have a panel about DEI in innovation and research, and Judith Sheff is leading that. Trina, I think you're on it as well. So come to Engage next week and hear more about the topic.
Okay. Well, we are running over time here, I think. You're going to have to skip over our little break here. But again, they will be here, so if you have additional questions for our panelists, feel free to interact with them at lunch. But let's thank our panelists.